Hey, if you're in Virginia Beach or Richmond and you want to buy a single ticket to our stand-up shows, you can do so now. Single tickets are now available in Virginia Beach and Richmond, and we'll see you on October 16th in San Jose, California. Okay, trigger warning for the neocons. This is the former Joint Chairman, Admiral Mike Mullen. He's the former Joint Chiefs Chairman, and this is what he has to say about what Biden's doing with Russia right now over Ukraine. You ready? This is former Joint Chiefs. Again, this is not some Green Party person. This is not a socialist alternative. This is not a DSA member. This isn't a Jimmy Dore show guy. This is former Joint Chiefs. Listen to what he has to say.
Okay, let's turn to Ukraine. You heard President Biden's comments. You heard what John Kirby just said. How do you assess the nuclear threat from Russia right now?
Well, I have to take Putin seriously. He's got lots of options with tactical nuclear weapons from very low yield nuclear weapons. He's I believe, a cornered animal, and I think he's more and more dangerous. Just what's happened in the last 24 hours. That bridge was struck, which was logistically critical as well as very symbolic. So I think we have to take him seriously and think through what the requirements would be for us to respond to that. It also speaks to the need, I think, to get to the table. I'm a little concerned about the language, which we're about at the top, if you will.
President Biden's language.
President Biden's language, we're about at the top of the language scale, if you will. And I think we need to back off that a little bit and do everything we possibly can to try to get to the table to resolve this thing.
Now, imagine if he was saying that about Donald Trump. People would be saying, Trump's crazy. He's crazy. When he says he's at the top of the language scale, what he means is he's saber rattling in the most dangerous way possible. There's no other, you can't ramp up the rhetoric any more than Joe Biden's doing right now. That's what he means when he says we're at the top of the language scale. And imagine if he was saying that about Trump, everybody would be pulling their hair out, their hair would be on fire, and they'd be screaming bloody murder that this maniac is saber rattling with a nuclear power. He's got his finger on the nuclear button,
Jimmy,
Kurt.
do you remember that when Trump called Kim Jong-un short?
Yes.
And they flipped out. They're like, they have nuke. They don't even have a nuke that could reach us, by the way.
Yeah.
That people were losing. People I knew, I remember like, I can't believe he would do this. And that's not... I mean, they're doing this with not North Korea. This is fucking Russia.
Yeah, this is Russia.
They just told me he's the most dangerous people.
Yeah. Michael Glenn Mullen is a retired United States Navy admiral who served as the 17th chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff from October 1st, 2007 to September 30th, 2011. Here's more from Aaron Mate. He caught this and tweeted out. Let's watch.
So how do you see him saving face if he doesn't come to the table, if Ukraine can't figure anything out? And you've heard Zelensky as well. How does he possibly save face, especially after what you said about the bridge?
Well, it's very difficult to see it. We've been talking about since before this crisis started an off-ramp for him. I suspect it's in the east, if you will, with those 4 provinces or some combination of them with respect to how it all ends. And that really is up to, I think, Tony Blinken and other diplomats to figure out a way to get both Zelensky and Putin to the table. And is typical in any war, it's got to end. And usually there are negotiations associated with that. The sooner, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
And we talk about these tactical nuclear weapons. Where would he use those? What kind of damage can they do?
Well, depending on...
Now, they're talking about tactical nuclear weapons. Now, are they talking about depleted uranium tip? Is that what the kind of nuclear tactic is that? Because we've used those. The United States have used those. We're poisoning generations of people.
No, they don't poison anybody. The plutonium, uranium. That's just a...
depleted uranium. It's good for you.
Yeah.
So I like how they make it look like still Putin's the madman in this situation. She is doing that. That Putin's still the madman, even though he's not. We're the madmen. He's acting rationally, like everyone said he would act, and it's rational. Is it, I'm against war, so I would say, no, I'm against him invading Ukraine. But at the same time, everyone from Noam Chomsky to Henry Kissinger agreed that we were the one provoking him to do that and that he was acting rationally to do so. And so they're still making Putin out to be. So let's listen to what he
he's
says.
saying we got to get them to the peace table.
Yes.
Or like, what should we? So we distract Boris Johnson with like a cheese and cracker party or something.
That's
so
what
he
we
can't
do.
fly in and.
Yeah. Well, we threatened Boris Johnson with a comb, and then he's not the prime minister anymore. It's that crazy lady. Here we go.
The size of them, he's got some very small ones, which theoretically, while devastating, would localize the damage. The winds all blow back onto Russia, so he would have to, in a way, contaminate his own country. He could pick a symbolic target. He could pick Zelensky's hometown, for instance, as a target, as opposed to having a big impact on the battlefield that would badly hurt the Ukrainian army, which has fought so well.
All very frightening stuff, and always good to talk to you and hear your perspective. Thanks so much, Admiral.
Oh my God, he's going to nuke Zelensky's improv troupe.
So they're just open. They're just talking about nuclear war openly, like it's almost like a done deal. And no one, again, in the United States media is running around with their hair on fire, screaming about these maniacs in charge. If it was Trump, they would be, but Trump isn't. So again, this is another situation where Chomsky was wrong.
Trump didn't even say when he insulted that guy, "Wow, we're really close to nuclear war now." They just had a quote of Biden said we're closest to nuclear Armageddon since not. Why is he saying that?
I don't.
I guess
because we are, and because we're not run by grown-ups. There aren't any adults in the room. There's an adult diaper in the room. That's called Joe Biden.
Yeah.
So I wonder who's really making these decisions, because it isn't Joe Biden.
We skipped right to adult care facility.
Yeah. So this is real. And again, if Trump was doing this, people would be concerned. But Trump isn't doing it. Joe Biden's doing it. So everybody thinks this is what we're supposed to be doing because everyone is propagandized and they don't realize it. Russia is, so this is Seth Abramson. He says Russia is a terrorist state and Putin is a war criminal.
Oh, if only we belonged to that war crimes court, we could,
yeah,
we could prosecute him. If only we were under that law in any way.
Too bad the United States won't participate in any kind of international crime court. Any Republican advocating appeasement of the Kremlin and its sociopathic tyrant must be voted out of office. So these are people who are just maniacs for war. So this is how you get a nuclear war. You get a guy like Seth Abramson.
Stop coddling them with no nukes.
Yeah. Any U.S. politician not backing Ukraine and NATO right now is coddling our enemies. That's what they said during Iraq. That's what they said during the first Iraq. That's what they said during Vietnam. This is what they always say. Yeah, you have to be super pro-war, or you're backing our enemies.
You know what makes me really angry? I'm not entirely sure what exactly coddling is.
Right? What is it?
It's not cuddling.
Here's the Independent. The Kiev Independent says U.S. President Joe Biden said during a Democratic fundraiser in New York that Putin's threats to use tactical nuclear weapons are not a joke. Reuters reported, "We have not faced the prospect of Armageddon since Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis."
Well, thank God we got Biden in there to
Thank God.
settle this.
Thank God we got demented adult diaper Joe Biden in there, a guy who's was part of an administration that dropped more bombs than George Bush did. Do you know that? Do you know that Barack Obama dropped more bombs than George Bush? He took us from 2 wars to 7. Do you know that? You know, he didn't prosecute anybody who had participated in a torture program. But he did go after Julian Assange and Edward Snowden.
Well, they gave away state secrets.
And Chelsea
you know,
Manning.
That's not authoritarian.
Yeah, that's
authoritarian is Putin being mean to his oligarchs.
That's right. President Biden says the U.S. condemns Russia's missile strike today across Ukraine, which injured and killed civilians and demonstrated once again the brutality of Putin's illegal war. Unlike our illegal war in Syria, we're occupying a third of Syria right now. Isn't that ironic that we're doing that? No one ever brings it up. And which third of Syria you think we're occupying? The part with the oil and the wheat? That'd be it.
Aren't they all not legal since World War II?
Of
That's
course.
why they're not called wars.
These attacks only reinforce our commitment to stand with the people of Ukraine for as long as it takes. Our people in the United States, because nobody's telling them the truth about the Ukraine war, so they're just as dumb as... No, people are never going to rise up in America because they are controlled by the fucking corporate media. They don't think they are, but they are. They think that Chris Hayes and Anderson Cooper tells the truth. That's how bad it is in the United States. Under the circumstances, you'd think Biden would be demanding Zelensky get his ass to the negotiating table and cease sending weapons to Ukraine and its snake pit of Nazis in order to diffuse tensions. No. So we're close to nuclear war. Joe Biden, instead of de-escalating, instead of making Ukraine negotiate and avert a nuclear war, Joe Biden's calling for it. Joe Biden is ratcheting up tensions for a nuclear war. That's the stuff they said Trump was supposed to do.
Either you stand with Ukraine or you sit with Russia.
That's right. Hey, it's worth noting, Kurt, that the only reason we are facing nuclear war is so Biden and the crooks in Congress can launder billions in Ukraine, which is exactly what Julian Assange, I wish I had that goddamn video, when he talks about what the real purpose of war is. And the real purpose of a 20-year war in Afghanistan wasn't to bring freedom to the Afghanistan people or to stop terrorism, because we fund those same terrorists we were fighting in Afghanistan. The real reason was a transfer of wealth.
Oh, so we did win.
Yeah. To the international security state. It's a grift. It's an upward transfer of money. And they're raiding the treasuries of the United States and Western democracies for this purpose, and it's happening. And you see what's happening right now in Ukraine. So here's Julian Assange to let you know what the Ukraine war is really about. He's not talking about the Ukraine war, but it's the same thing.
Because the goal is not to completely subjugate Afghanistan. The goal is to use Afghanistan to wash money out of the tax bases of the United States, out of the tax bases of European countries, through Afghanistan and back into the hands of a transnational security elite. That is the goal, i.e. the goal is to have an endless war, not a successful war.
So, same thing in Ukraine. The goal is not to have a successful war because we know there's not going to be one. The goal is to drag this war out as long as possible because then we can funnel hundreds of billions of more dollars corruptly and launder it through Ukraine. That's all this is. We're doing stand-up comedy in Virginia Beach, Richmond, Virginia, Arlington, Virginia, San Jose, California, Miami, Florida, West Palm Beach, Denver, Palm Springs, Austin, Texas. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all the tickets. And while you're there, join our premium program. You get to see my new stand-up special coming out.